Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 39 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. So on today's show, we are recording live from Las Vegas, Nevada. It is very hot here, and I am with Gary Wood, who has joined me all the way from Houston, Texas. And Gary, thank you so much for being on the show. It is very exciting to have you here. Are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
I am.
Awesome. Okay, so just a little bit about Gary. He is the president and co-founder of Integrus Solutions, a national recruiting and consulting company. And he's worked in the recruiting profession for over 15 years and personally specializes in analytical recruiting, which I'm fascinated with what that means. So we'll learn more about that. So, for the past 20 years, he has dedicated his energy and efforts on working with many local nonprofit and charitable LGBT organizations. He's currently a member of the board of directors for the Montrose Center, as well as president of Outreach United and co-founder and co-chair of the Greater Houston LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And on the previous episode, we actually talked to the other co-chair and co-founder, who is Tammy Wallace. So Gary, thank you so much again for being on the show and for all the work that you're doing in LGBT communities.
Oh, thank you, Rhodes.
Yeah. So to kick off the interview, tell us a little bit more about what you do. I'm fascinated by what analytical recruiting is, and just tell us what makes your business unique.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm honored to be here in Vegas and representing our chamber to the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce and Business Expo. This is a tremendous event. I have been in this business for a little over 15 years. I own my own company, and everybody wonders what a recruiter really does. Well, let me tell you what a recruiter really does. A great recruiter, like myself, what I do is I help in a very consultative way find great candidates for my clients, candidates that are not on the market readily. They would not be found without my expertise. I have done analytics for over 15 years. Actually, 5 years before that, I was an analyst. And basically what that is that's where we will take a large amount of data and we'll either model or that data, we could do some trend analysis and gather insight. And in that insight, it will give us a strategic decision on what is the highest probability of an outcome. And let me give you a perfect example. Do you take a prescription drug?
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, if it wasn't for analytics, you could not take prescription drugs because you would not know the outcome of what that drug might do in a way throughout the clinical trial that they either observed or that they did analysis. Have you ever bought a car?
Yes.
There's analysis again through credit risk analysis. They look at and assess the risk and the likelihood of that person paying off that loan or defaulting on that loan.
Yeah.
And so that's where the analysis and analytics is, but it goes much deeper than that. It can also go into optimization of systems or processes or in marketing. So it's pretty cool. I think I have the best job in the world because I get to help people find great jobs.
I love that. And it's this environment that we're in is so data focused. Big data is everywhere. And I'm curious, there's a lot of opportunities with that, I'm sure, with artificial intelligence and so many different avenues that you can go in with the work that you're doing. So with all of that, right now, what is the one thing that you feel is the most exciting, the thing that lights you up every day? You love your job, but what has you most inspired right now?
In regards to analytics or just my job?
Just everything that you do as a business owner. What's the one thing
Business owner. See, that's totally different. I get inspired many different ways. The one thing that I have to say is that I think that it is a monumental change on how we are going to interact in the future in analytics and also in employment, because we are data driven. It is a very sophisticated world that's utilizing different tools and that will interface with each other differently. So as I see that progress through the last few years and the trajectory where that's going, it's going to be tremendous. We're rewriting our future now because of technology. Technology has done this several times over, and it's right now at the cusp of, especially with AI, I'm glad that you brought that up. It is absolutely unimaginable what you can do with AI now. That's one aspect, but what I'm really excited about and what I see as for me personally, as something that is going to be very meaningful is where we in Houston right now and what we're doing with the LGBT business and the Chamber of Commerce. We quickly came up to speed, and within the first 16 months, we have created not only consistent programming and business connect opportunities, but we've worked with the Super Bowl. We have created incredible sponsorships and partnerships with companies, as well with other organizations and other chambers within the city. So that inspires me because that also is enacting change within our city and also our region. And Texas is extremely high profile. It's very visible.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think with that work that you're doing with coalitions is so key. And I'm curious, in your bio, it had mentioned that you've been doing work in the field of recruiting for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so when did you start your business?
It's kind of funny. When I started my business, it was only about a year and a half ago, this existing business. But I started another business before that about 7 years ago, where I had a business partner, and we were very successful, and I decided to buy out my business partner and roll all that business into a new company.
That's cool.
So that's pretty exciting for me. I've always worked at a very high level in all my different companies I've worked with professionally, and this was a natural progression. I love business. I love what I do. I'm an incredible recruiter. I have a lot of passion for it. But I'm also a really good businessman.
Yeah. So you've been an entrepreneur for almost a decade, as a business owner, really smart in buying out your partner and transforming your company. So when you first got started about a decade ago, I want you to go back to that time and try to remember some of the motivations of why you started your business. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is that usually when I interview guests on the show, they start their business for one of two reasons, usually. The first is that they have a passion, they have this idea, they want to change the world, they want to be Steve Jobs and make this huge dent in the universe, right? And the second reason is that sometimes working in a corporate environment or, even a small business, the folks that I have on the show realize at some point, I'm building someone else's dreams, or I'm making someone else wealthy, and I feel like I have to compromise part of myself in order to be here. I can't be my authentic self. And so naturally, you could probably identify with both, but which side of the coin resonates the most with you and why?
Wow, that is a great question because it does encompass both. I think for me personally is that I love the innovativeness that I would like to bring to an organization. And the execution of that is where I have always found success. I do like doing that for myself. Business ownership is not for everybody. One thing that I've found over the years is that many people have a incredible talent or a great passion, but they do not know business, and they often fail. They don't have the fundamentals. They don't understand capitalization. They don't understand the financial aspects. And that is something that is challenging for many. I have been very fortunate to have worked with a lot of great mentors in the past and a lot of awesome companies that have allowed me to grow and develop and to acquire those skills, take my passions, and then be able to turn that into a business that I enjoy. And I think that is probably the best outcome is when, and I would tell everybody, if you do anything in life, no matter what it is in business, make sure you enjoy it because you put too much time into it not to.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, as you've acquired your partner's company, it's your company now, you're kind of taking it in a different direction. You had mentioned that, starting your business was a kind of a hybrid of both of those reasons. And so kind of thinking about business culture in particular, what's one thing that you do in your business to really let your team know that they can be their whole selves at work, and just kind of being a part of the Rainbow family, understanding that sometimes in companies that aren't yours, people feel like they have to hide, aspects of who they are, who they love. And so I'm just curious, is there anything that you really recognize as something in your own experience as an employee that you're like, what, when I have my business, I'm going to do it different, and here's how I'm going to treat my people. Have you incorporated anything like that in your business?
That's a great question. And what I've found is over all the years, I've always been a manager of a company or in the leadership. And what I've found is that you can't manage everybody the same because everybody's different. And when you look at the intergenerational aspects of today's world, in the business world, and you also look at the uniqueness of each person and the skill sets that they bring to the table, their passions that they have, there's a fluidity to that. You cannot take, and often people do, and they make a terrible mistake. They'll take the highest producer and say, wow, you're so great, we're going to put you in management. Not giving them any training, not giving them any direction or guidance. Okay, you're just a manager. So what ends up happening is that person often will struggle. They're not fulfilled in what they're doing. They become a terrible manager. They drive off all the other good people, and then they end up quitting. So you've lost the best performer, now a manager, and there's collateral damage within the team. But if you can embrace each individual person and what they bring to the table, and that chemistry is absolutely vital for any organization. I call it fit. I can go in and I can say, okay, you need these technical skills, you need this type of pedigree, you need this type of experience, but it's about fit. Yeah. And if you don't have fit, you're not going, you can have the most talented, in my world, data scientist. And that person could be absolutely incredibly technical and just brilliant. However, if they're not a great fit to the team, are you going to best utilize their skill sets? Are they going to accomplish as much as they would have if they maybe had been in a different environment? So that is something that whenever I work with my clients and I work with my candidates, I'm trying to understand what is their drivers, what are their passions, how do they best are communicated with. I give them, sometimes I'll give them a test to understand their characterization of communication and of the way that they like to be engaged. And by doing that, you find a better fit, you'll find a happier employee, and far, far more productivity.
Yeah. I think that's a great example of, I'm thinking of Zappos in particular, where they'll hire people that are really talented and then kind of look at their skill sets, look at what they're passionate about, and leverage that energy into whatever they need to get done at that point, in terms of needs. So I'd like to switch gears just a bit and talk a little bit more about your LGBT identity and what brings you to the out entrepreneur. And just to start, did being LGBTQ influence your journey to start your own business about a decade ago?
Wow. That's a great question. It actually did. Actually, it started long before then, believe it or not. I was a store director in the grocery retail business, and I worked for the largest independently owned grocery company in the nation called HEB, and somewhat of a conservative company, Texas-based, about a $7 billion company, family-owned company. And I had progressed very quickly. I've always been driven. I've always wanted to exceed expectations. I have an incredible work ethic and integrity. And I pretty much can outwork anybody. I can work 24 hours straight without a break. But I had progressed so quickly through the company that I was one of the very first, one of the youngest store directors to open a store. It was in a predominantly gay and lesbian area, Montrose in Houston. I'm building out the store, and here I am with a hard hat, and construction people are everywhere, and I'm looking at blueprints, and the vice president of diversity comes up, and he goes, Gary, how's it going? I say, oh man, it's great. We're on time. I think we're going to be under budget, and I know it's going to be a great store. And he goes, that's awesome. And we're talking. He goes, hey Gary, I got a question for you. I go, hey, what's that, Fred? And he goes, hey, not that it matters. I love when they start off that way, Yeah. Not that it matters. But, hey, I was wondering, are you gay? And I looked at him and I go, Fred, I am. But I really want to talk about this wall and how we're going to move it. Wow. So wow. I was the very first openly gay store director. The funny thing is, years later, after I left that company, I had progressed on to another career in marketing and analysis. That's kind of got me to where I am today. I had a couple of people come up to me and go, wow, Gary, I just want to tell you that when you did that, that inspired me to also be who I was and be very open about it. And they thanked me. Yeah. And I was really I was really touched with that. And, I enacted a positive change in that company and with those individuals. And I never lost that. And I think that's something that drives me today, is enacting a positive change in what I do, who I interact with. Like so many in our community, are overly driven and want to have a perception of being the best. And I think that that's one thing that I can say about the LGBT community has always impressed me, is you have extremely talented and passionate individuals that are almost fighting to be exceptional because they want to be more than just, it's just about being LGBT.
Yeah, I like what you said about just casually responding to your supervisor who was like, are you gay? And you're like, of course. And let's just talk about like the task at hand, right? Like just that alone was able to normalize a response and show to other people who may be covering at work, like, wow, Gary did this. So if Gary did that, that's giving me confidence to do that.
You know what's so funny is, because of that, I was helping another store director with a store, and his opening before mine was ready. The assistant of the president of the company comes in the store, and she goes, Gary, and she comes over and gives me a big hug. And I'm like, well, I don't normally hug the assistant to the president of the company. And I go, well, hey, Gene, how's it going? She goes, hey, Bob's looking for you. Now, here I am, just a store director, and he's president of HEB at that time. And I go, okay, well, is this good or bad, Gene? She goes, no, it's great. And the president company comes up to me, and I've seen him at a lot of meetings, and we've interacted. And he comes in, and he goes, hey, Gary, he goes, I talked to Fred, and Fred told me about your conversation. I want you to know that we're going to stand behind you, and I want to get involved personally, and I want to be involved with this store and this community. That was tremendous. And to this day, that has always resonated with me. And when I resigned, I had the president of the company, Bob, call me and goes, hey, Gary, he goes, and I go, Bob, once again, not good when the president of the company's calling you. I go, Bob, something wrong? He goes, yes, I heard that you're resigning. I said, Bob, something that I have to do. And, I've been in grocery retail for 16 years. I want to do something else. And he goes, completely understand. He asked me about the new company and all that. And he goes, here, I'm going to give you a number. And I wrote down this number. I go, what's this number? He goes, that's my home phone. You call me when you want to come home.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you were challenged in that moment of having to be out, and you chose just to be yourself. And in that, you were able to inspire other people to have confidence and being authentic in their own work. And on top of that, you were able to inspire the leadership to see the value that you bring as an out gay man at work. So I think like for listeners who kind of know the flow of the show, they're seeing some of the trends of like, wow, this is definitely an asset. And so I often ask guests to share just a little bit more about, our unique experiences of being a part of the rainbow family. Something that we all share, even though we have many different communities under the rainbow umbrella, is the coming out process. And so I'm wondering, with your experience as a business owner and drawing on your experiences of having to come out again and again, and some of the other things that make our experiences unique being LGBT, what do you think are some other assets from just being out as a gay man that allow you to, as Tammy said in a previous interview, have that kind of grit and persistence to do all of the things that's asked of you to be, an effective business owner? Can you think of, maybe one or two traits or qualities that we as LGBT people bring to being business owners?
Tammy is absolutely right. We think so much alike and share the same perspectives of life. And with this, it's a very, very unique question because of all the different variables in where they are in their life. I've come across friends that have struggled because of the industry they're in. Let's say it's predominantly a very conservative industry like oil and gas. Houston, it's oil and gas. 65% of our economy is probably oil and gas. It's not it's not about their capabilities or their professionalism or their the results that they drive. It could be that individual that, unbeknownst to them, makes a decision not to do business or not to get involved or an offer, an opportunity based on that fact. So that's something that we always have to face. So that is the result of being openly LGBT and accepting those risks. However, it's the same. It can be as much one way as it is the other. The other way is, wow, you know what? They're LGBT. And I support that, and I'm going to give them an opportunity because of that.
Yeah.
One of my largest clients I've worked with for 12 years, and I walked into her office, and I've known her for a long time. She was talking, and we were talking about my staff, my consultants that were there, and she goes, "Yes, I'm going to be going out of town. Me and my wife are going." And so she just kind of came out to me, and it was so funny because it was so natural. It's like, oh yeah, well, me and my at that time, my partner, now my husband, I was like, yeah, we're in a DuPont Circle, and we're going to be going over to this place for dinner. And I mean, it was just like, there was not even a blink of an eye in that conversation. I didn't really see it coming, and I guess she might have thought about me. I am an individual that I am not going to tell you, I'm going to come in, snap my fingers twice and go, okay, I'm the big gay recruiter, and I'm going to do a great job for you. I'll come in, and you're going to want to work with me because I'm going to do the best job for you. Yeah. But if you ask me if I'm gay, I'm going to tell you that I am. That doesn't matter. It's like I told that guy at HEB, yeah, that's it, but I still want this wall moved.
Yeah. It's one of those things where when you're authentic, when you're out, there's a trust element. People know that you're shooting, a straight shooter, or that's probably the wrong analogy to use there, but that you're direct and that you're able to just be honest with who you are. And that is attracting people that really appreciate that. And I think for that client, that example that you shared, it sounded like it took her, maybe 12 years to get to that point where I'm like, okay, Gary's cool. Gary's out. I'm going to test this. And you received that so well. So thank you for sharing that. One more question before we go to a sponsorship break. And that's just thinking about some of the challenges that you were able to describe with being out and being a business owner and some of those benefits of just attracting those clients that are so fun to work with. What do you want our listeners to really hone in on to think about how they can be authentic in their work? So for the folks that listen to the show, there's a lot of people that are still thinking, maybe I'm going to start a business, but I'm not quite there yet. And other folks have just started. What should they, what's kind of sage advice that you can give them to just be honest and out and not think twice about sharing who they are?
Once again, it's up to them to do the assessment. Let's go back to the oil and gas business. Somewhat conservative. If you wanted to create a geophysical type of company, it might be somewhat challenging. But once again, I think that it all comes around just being able to do an incredible job and have awesome results. One of my clients one time said, "Gary, I don't care what you do. You are the best recruiter I've ever had. And I'm always going to use you." And he asked, he goes, "I don't know any gay people." And I was like, "Honey, you know a lot of gay people." But, but I was like, well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate your honesty and your directness. I'm from Texas. I'm going to be direct back. This is who I am. It doesn't change my performance and what I'm going to do. This is just one aspect of my life. And, we have now become very good friends, but do that assessment and don't shoot yourself in the foot. I hate to say that, just to try to prove a point.
Yeah.
That's not a way to run a business. You're there to do whatever you're there to do. If it's a recruiting in my instance, or if you're going to be an engineer or engineering firm, that's what your business is. It's not anything to do with LGBT. That's just kind of who I am.
Yeah, I think that you did a great job of basically saying, one, kind of leading with what your skills are, what you can do for your clients, showing that again and again, and still, like, once developing a rapport with them, if you weren't immediately out, sharing things about your partner, sharing things about your life, your family, etc. And I think that that's good advice for those folks thinking about starting, is if you are in a conservative industry like oil and gas, fossil fuels, just recognizing hey, this is the nature of the industry. I'm going to do my work. And, once I know the folks that I work with, if they ask about my life, I'm going to be honest, if you feel safe, and I think that that's a judgment call. I think that that's good advice that, a lot of people listen around the world, and, the environment is different everywhere. And I think just like business, you have to trust your intuition, right? I mean, that's
absolutely
all the time.
And there's too many variables that say, oh, yes, you should do it. I mean, assess all aspects and also accept the risk.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I think we can all agree on as entrepreneurs is that we enjoy risk to a certain degree. So, so with that, we're going to go to a really quick sponsorship break, but please don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Gary, about his business, and how we can stay in touch with him.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round where we'll have the chance to get to know Gary just a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn one way to stay in touch with Gary after today's conversation. So, Gary, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
I think so.
All right. Yeah, you got this. Okay. So in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
These are tough questions.
Yeah, they
are. To me, fulfilling, meaningful, and something that I'm at I'm at a stage in my life that I'm going to be.
Yeah. I love that. That was very simple. So good and quality advice there. So what's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
The most important aspect to business, if you want to be successful no matter what it is discipline. You have to be disciplined in your approach and your work ethic and what you do. It's all about discipline. And if you're not disciplined, do not open your own business.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to take off after, I'm just going, I'll get around to it. Now, if you're not disciplined, if you're not setting the example and doing, and holding yourself accountable, how can you ever expect anybody else to hold themselves accountable? Doesn't work. Discipline.
Yeah. Discipline and stay committed and focus on one course until successful, and then you can go to the next shiny object. Right? And in your business, I know that there's a lot of demands. So name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
For me, in my business, the thing that I delegate are those tasks that do not make money.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're not doing something to make you money or save you money or reduce your risk, and then in that order, then you need to delegate it or outsource it. And I'm not an accountant. Why am I over there doing my books? I don't need to do that. I need to go out and make enough money to pay somebody to do that.
I like that. Yeah. A really good mentor of mine said, look at your calendar and circle all the things on your calendar that are making you money, and try to think about that as the business development side, the vision side, the job of the CEO, and then kind of identify all those other things that are time wasters and cut those out or delegate them out, and for solo entrepreneurs, again, kind of understand all of those systems and processes that you're setting up. So when you get to that point where you can hire people, you can start going down that list and delegating those things out. So really, really great advice. So a couple more questions for you. Given kind of the current political and cultural environment that we're in with the current presidential administration, I've received a lot of questions around if the current presidential administration is good for LGBT businesses or can actually cause harm. So do you view the current presidential administration as one that is galvanizing LGBT business owners to work together, or do you see that this is kind of fracturing work that, from your perspective, especially from the chamber, that this is a real concern for you and your community in Houston?
Rose, this is something that I have a very specific thought about that. I think that's extremely important, and that is that it is galvanizing. It is inspiring others to become more involved. So there is that aspect of it. I mean, there's no mistake that the current administration and some of the policies and some of the efforts that are being made are not harmful. It's how we respond to that. And that's where I think that we need to really look at how we can work collaboratively, and not amongst just the LGBT. I'm talking the allies. We have strong allies. You know, I came from a time when it was not cool to be gay. It was not. You had to be in the closet. And, you know, back then it was the activism, and we all were on the streets, and we were up in everybody's face, and that did create change. True change today is that too, but it's about business. Yeah. It's about dollars. It's about taking away business if you pass legislation like that. So yes, it's galvanizing. It's that collaboration, and we all need to work very hard to do that.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And definitely the power of LGBT business owners and allies, it's huge. And we saw that in North Carolina. We're seeing that in your state in Texas, all across the country. There's real power there. And the work that all 1.4 million of us in the United States are doing as LGBT business owners, not only are we able to respond and work in coalition, but we're also creating economic empowerment opportunities for LGBT folks, for all of our allies, for folks that want to work with us. So I think that that's really, really great advice. One more question for you. And this question is really simple. So how can we stay in touch with you? How can we learn more about your business? Great.
Well, of course, I can be reached anytime via my LinkedIn account, my web address, my phone number.
What's your website?
My website is Integrussolutions.com. INTEGRUS solutions.com.
Awesome. And that's where you can find Gary. We'll include that in the show notes. And Gary, thank you again for being on the show. It's a true pleasure. And for Outbosses, thank you again for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many other inspiring outbosses like Gary. And as a next step, check out our show notes from highlights from today's conversation. Subscribe to the podcast, and consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.